West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another edition of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. I'm one half of the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, and today we are going to do another quick episode, this one looking at the emerging talent in this year's CPL. Now, at the conclusion, or just around the conclusion of CPL, a press release was put out from CPL, I'll just quickly read it for you, which was labelled or titled, Record Year for Emerging Player Appearances in CPL. The 2024 Republic Bank Caribbean Premier League has seen a record number of appearances by emerging players. Across the group stage, there have been 44 appearances by these up-and-coming cricketers, the most that there has ever been during a CPL season. Now, just to remind people, to qualify for the emerging player category, the cricketer must be under 23 at the start of the current calendar year and have not made an appearance for the senior West Indies side. Teams are obliged to give the two players in this category a combined total of 5 appearances. But during the 2024 tournament, a number of the emerging players have become first-team regulars. Michael Hall, CPL's Tournament Operation Director, said, "It is very pleasing to see these players not only be given the chance at this level, but also for them to perform consistently enough to get playing time beyond the mandatory requirement. For the emerging player class of 2024 to go past the appearance quota by almost 50% is great news for CPL and for cricket in the Caribbean." Good for CPL. Now, ever since that statement was put out, I'd written a note in my content calendar. Yeah, believe it or not, I do actually write down content ideas and things that we should cover on the podcast. But sometimes I just don't get around to it, work, life, etc. Got to fit it in, and sometimes time just passes and it doesn't make sense to do the content, do the idea anymore. But this one, I kept writing down saying, I've got to address this one. I've got to address it. Because you'll know from myself and Santoki, and not just this year's CPL, but in many previous editions of CPL, we've always been quite critical of the emerging players rule and being quite critical that teams just seem to use the emerging player slot as, well, we've got to play them rather than we want to play them, or we feel that this young talent is a serious player that can go on to do things. So after CPL put this statement out, I was like, okay, let me just go and look at the actual stats and facts around this year's CPL, because my gut instinct when I read, they've played a record number of games, my gut instinct without studying the stats was, yeah, but I reckon only 3 or 4 players make up the majority of those games. And when I give you the numbers, I'm going to let you lot be the judge of it. And I'm not here to be critical of it. I'm just here to give some information, and you lot can get in the comments below and let me know what your feelings are on it. Was this so the stats are, this was a record year in terms of appearances for emerging players. That's fine. The question I'm asking is, was it a significant year in terms of emergence of these emerging players? Did we see anything that we didn't already know before? That's a key line for me, so I'll say that again. Did we see anything that we didn't already know before? That's question 1. Did we see anything where we can look at some of these players and go, you're going to go on to be really successful in West Indies cricket? Question 2. Did we see anything where we can say, yeah, CPL has really brought this young player's game forward, and now it's going to lead to X and now it's going to lead to Y? Okay? So let's go from the top. I'm going to go through each of the teams, and like I say, get at me in the comments below. I'll give my conclusion at the end. So the first team is Antigua and Barbuda Falcons, obviously the new franchise this year who replaced the Talawars. Now, the obvious standout name, and it's the one name that everybody should obviously have on the tip of their tongue, given he's been selected for the West Indies senior side, which I guess means that he can no longer be an emerging player next year, right? Anyways, Jewel Andrew has been selected for the West Indies ODI side that is currently or is on its way to Sri Lanka, or who maybe is already in Sri Lanka. So Jewel played 7 games for the Falcons. He scored 128 runs at an average of 26 with a strike rate of 111 with 150 in the tournament. Now, obviously, Jewel Andrew is only 17 years old. Here's the next big thing. If you've been following the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, we done been talking about Jewel Andrew from time ago. And this is why I asked that question about, did we see anything that we didn't already know? If you're a real cricket head in the Caribbean, if you're a real West Indian cricket head and you study the game from the real grassroots level all the way up like we do on CCP, you already knew who Jewel Andrew was. If you needed this year's CPL to suddenly find out who Jewel Andrew was, you ain't studying the cricket. You ain't studying the cricket properly. Not in our region anyways. Real cricket heads already knew about Jewel Andrew. So I do refute the kind of tag slightly that, right, CPL has brought Jewel Andrew to the fore. What CPL has done is put Jewel Andrew in a probably a bigger limelight because CPL is a tournament that has global eyes on it. But Jewel Andrew was already doing his thing. And the real cricket heads already knew that this guy was a generational talent. Myself and Santoki had already said Jewel Andrew was a generational talent a year ago. And that's when he was 16. Okay. So I wouldn't be quick to say, well done, CPL. You've pushed Jewel Andrew forward. They get some credit, but Jewel Andrew's out here. He's done being out here. So we would expect Jewel Andrew to go on, provided the money and the fame doesn't get to his head. We would expect Jewel Andrew to go on to have a very, very good career, certainly in the short term, hopefully in the long term. The other player who was the emerging player in the Antigua team was Joshua James. Joshua James is 23 years old. He's another one. If you've been a follower of CCP for a long time, you've heard me talk about Joshua James for time. He's still part of the West Indies Academy. Joshua James should have kicked on a lot more than he currently has done. If you've ever seen Joshua James in the flesh, I had the pleasure of seeing him out in Ireland when the West Indies academy team went out there to play those games earlier this year. Joshua James is huge. This guy can hit a long ball. This guy can bowl a quick ball. I don't think we've developed him properly. This year's CPL, Antigua played him 2 games. 2 games, that's it. He bowled 3 overs in those 2 games for 14 runs, took 1 wicket. That's all he got. Joshua James has been part of CPL now for at least 2-3 seasons, and every season it's the same thing. He gets like a 2 games here, maybe a 3 games here, and he's yet to kick on. He's yet to get that real development push. By now, Joshua James should already be in the Trinidad and Tobago side. If Trinidad and Tobago were serious, Joshua James would already be in their side. In whether in red ball, 50 over, whatever, he should already be part of the TT setup. I expect him to be part of the West Indies Academy in the upcoming Super 50. But if we're doing like a tick and a cross for Joshua James, just a cross. How's he only playing 2 games out of 10 for Antigua? And that was a down bad Antigua side as well. So no, CPL this year did not help Joshua James. Barbados Royals, Rivaldo Clark played 4 games, 21 years old, played 4 games for Barbados Royals, scored 41 runs at a strike rate of 103. I should just be clear, because obviously Rivaldo probably bat 7 and 8. So for those 41 runs, how many balls did he face? 40. So his strike rate was 103, like I said. And Ramon Simmons, 23 years old. Both these two are part of the academy, although the new academy, do you know what, actually? Tell a lie. Tell a lie, people. The new academy contracts have just come out, because we're going to be doing a video on that as well. So hear me out, people. Here we go. So the academy, see, even this is a critical point, right? The academy. So Rivaldo is part of next year's academy cohort. the 24-25 academy cohort. Ramon Simmons is not. Ramon is 23 now. So the question mark for me, Ramon Simmons, is, so where does Ramon go from here? Okay, Ramon played 3 games, bowled 10.3 overs, took 2 wickets, economy 8.76, left arm seamer. Now, Ramon Simmons, we've been talking about, again, another one from 2 years ago. I was saying, yeah, this guy's got real talent. Got some injuries, took some time out of the game due to the injuries. He's on the comeback trail, but I just wonder for someone like Ramon Simmons, where's next for Ramon Simmons? No longer part of the West Indies Academy. No guarantee that Barbados pick him up in whether in Super 50. I'm intrigued to see if Barbados pick him up in Super 50. And if they don't, where does he play his cricket? Actually, and I should point out that Joshua James also isn't part of the academy going forward. So who picks up Joshua James going forward now for his cricket going into Super 50 and Red Bull season? Who does another franchise get him? And if they don't, how does Joshua James and Ramon Simmons develop from being talented 23-year-olds with little game time to being good by 26, 27? We don't know already how this goes when these players aren't catered for between that kind of mythical age of 23 to 26. Anyways, positives or negatives for Rivaldo, Clark, Ramon Simmons, 4 games, 3 games apiece. Seems a bit bits and pieces. Obviously, Barbados Royals got to the final eliminator, being eliminated by Guyana. I mean, jury's out on those two. Did CPL advance their careers this year? At best, jury's out. At worst, you'd say no, they did not. Moving on, Guyana Amazon Warriors. Matthew Nandu played 0 games. So that's a real good use of the emerging player quotient there. Well done, Guyana. 0 games. Well done. What's the point in picking an emerging player if they're going to play 0 games? And this is why I've always said that CPL's rules should demand that every emerging player has to play. The idea that they have to play a minimum of 5 between the two of them leads to situations like this. Matthew Nandu, 0 games. Junior Sinclair played the full quotient of the 5 games that they have to play. He played 5. Now, bear in mind, in 5 games, that means you can bowl a total of 20 overs. Junior Sinclair is a bowler. He bowled 8. So well done, Guyana. You really used your emerging player quotient really well this year. One guy played 0 games. The other guy played the 5 games because they have to play 5. And of the possible 20 overs he could have bowled, he bowled 8. So you basically picked an emerging player to be a specialist fielder. Sick of this. That's a fail from Guyana. Well, you ain't doing nothing for the young people. So that's a fail there. That's a fail there for Guyana. Moving on. St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots, who obviously were down bad, the worst team in the tournament. Let me just go back. Matthew Nandu does not have a academy contract. Junior Sinclair does not have an academy contract. However, I would expect that both Nandu and Sinclair, I'm not sure if they'll get 50 over contracts, but I'd expect that Guyana Harpy Eagles will be giving both of those. Well, I don't even know. Nandu will definitely get a franchise contract for Guyana for red ball cricket. I don't know about Junior Sinclair. Let's wait and see if he plays in Super 50 for Guyana. If neither of them do, again, question marks. So what's happening for their development? Right, St. Kitts, Ashmead Ned. He played 5 games. He's 23 years old, so he won't be emerging next year because he'll be 24 by next year's CPL. He's also contracted, if I'm not mistaken, is Ashmead Ned contracted to Leeward Islands, or did he lose his franchise contract? Anyways, we'll watch that one and see what happens with him outside of this tournament. He played 5 games for St. Kitts. He bowled 17 overs, so they used him. He took 5 wickets, albeit one match he took 4 for those 5 wickets. 5 wickets at 28 apiece, economy 8.29. Yeah, that's fine. I'll give him a tick. I'll give a tick for Ashmead Ned and St. Kitts' utilisation of him in a down bad season for St. Kitts. Johan Lane, 21 years old. He will be with the West Indies Academy in the forthcoming season. He played 1 game, bowled 2 overs, conceded 30 runs. So that was all we saw from Johan Lane. That's a cross for him. Who's next? Kings, St. Lucia Kings, who won the tournament. McKenny Clark, 0 games. McKennie Clark has an academy contract going forward this year. So we would expect to see McKennie Clark hopefully play in Super 50 and then the Red Bull Championship for the West Indies Academy. But St. Lucia Kings used him 0 times. So Matthew Nandu for Guyana, 0 games. McKennie Clark for St. Lucia Kings, 0 games. Now, what the Kings would say is, yeah, but they would say they went above and beyond their emerging player quotient because Akeem Ogis played 11 games. He pretty much was he was in the, sorry, what am I trying to say here? He was a first choice player. Did he light up the tournament? No, but he played some steady hands, those kind of glue type innings, hold the innings together a bit whilst the power hitters bat around him. He scored 141 runs in the tournament at 20 with a strike rate of 112. I rate Kings for that, and I rate Sammy for that. For obviously Akeem is St. Lucian, but they gave Akeem, and not only did they play Akeem, they gave him an important position. He often batted at 3 or 4, and like I say, played a kind of glue guy innings. I didn't really see enough to say anything that like, oh, he's got a real explosive game, but I saw enough innings where I was like, okay, there's some clear potential there. So Kings get a tick for their use of Akeem Ogis for sure. And for also playing him, like I say, in roles in the top order. And then lastly, Trinbago Knight Riders. So Trinbago had Shaqiri Paris and Nathan Edward. Nathan Edward has an academy contract going forward. So again, you would expect to see Nathan Edward in the Super 50 and Red Bull Championship for the academy. Shaqiri was probably one of the star turns of the tournament. He played 8 games for Trinbago. The question mark I've got with Shaqiri is, did he play those 8 games on merit, or was he also playing those 8 games because at different times Dre was injured, Narayan was injured, and Trinbago seemed to be managing their resources a bit? Either way, he still played the 8 games. 179 runs at 22 apiece, 150 in that, strike rate of 108. So well done to Trinbago for giving a Ute man significant game time. Whether they wanted to or not, they still gave the Ute man game time. And again, it'll be interesting to see. So where does Shaqiri go from there? I think last season he played some cricket for CCC. So I don't expect Trinbago to be picking him in their Super 50 side. Obviously, Jason Mohammed and them man will still get the places. And I wouldn't expect that he'll get a pick in their Red Bull Championship side. But CCC did pick him last year. So Shaqiri Paris should be playing some cricket outside of, at the kind of top end of regional cricket to continue his development. Nathan Edward, the under-19 World Cup seamer. He only played 2 games, but he was impressive. He bowled 5.5 overs and took 4 wickets at 14 apiece, economy 9.60. He's only 19. So I can allow the fact that they only played him for 2 games, particularly as they invested in Shaqiri Paris. So in total, the emerging players got 10 for Trinbago Knight Riders. I'll give him a tick for Shaqiri. Nathan Edward, because he's only 19, we can give him a pass for that one. Okay, so let's go back to what CPL said. So CPL said, oh, great year, groundbreaking year, enough Ute man got appearances. This shows that the development for West Indies cricket and cricket in the region is up because of CPL. I would just translate it as this. Who came out of CPL as a Ute man with a reputation where we can go, yeah, let's get behind the Ute man? Jewel Andrew, 100% did, but we already knew about him. Ashmead Ned did. He won't be a Ute man next year. Let's see. Now Ashmead Ned's not an emerging player. Let's see if he gets a pick next year. Okay. But we kind of knew about Ashmead Ned. And even then he still only played 5 games. But we'll give him a tick. So Jewel Andrew tick. Ashmead Ned tick. Akeem Ogis tick. 11 games. He's the one who played the most as the Kings went on to win the tournament. And Shaqiri Paris tick. So what that tells me is, of the 12 possible emerging players that played in CPL this year, in a record-breaking year for emerging players, I think 4 of them you can say, yep, CPL can legitimately say, yeah, we showcased some youth man and their games kicked on a slight bit because of their appearances in CPL. That's 4 out of 12. What you lot need to tell me is 4 out of 12 good enough? I'm not here to say if it is or if it isn't. I'm just giving you the facts. 4 out of 12 had a good tournament where they were showcased, you could argue, properly. Right? Is that good enough? 2 out of 12 played no games. Is that good enough? Which leaves the remaining 6 who it looks to me like they were just there to kind of fill in spaces because they have to play. So Joshua James, Rivaldo Clark, Ramon Simmons, Johan Lane, Nathan Edward to an extent, right? So you lot tell me, get at me in the comments below. Let me go back to the statement. People. Let me find it. Let me see if I can find it. I've probably lost it now. Bear with me, people. Let me find the statement again, and let's just go back to the original statement. So Michael Hall, CPL's Tournament Operations Director, said, "It is very pleasing to see these players not only being given the chance at this level, but also for them to perform consistently enough to get playing time beyond the mandatory requirement. For the emerging players class of 2024 to go past the appearance quota by almost 50% is great news for CPL and for cricket in the Caribbean." So let me end with that moot point then, people. Was this year's CPL great for cricket in the Caribbean? Was the use of emerging players in this year's CPL great for cricket in the Caribbean? Did you see enough to suggest, yep, CPL really helped develop these youth man's game? Or are there some question marks for you? And I just reiterate this last point before I close off. Some of these players are no longer part, or if they were, are no longer part of the West Indies Academy. And at the moment, we do not know, we're awaiting the announcement of squads for Super 50, who they're going to play for, or if they're even going to get any game time for any franchise going forward. Joshua James, Ramon Simmons, Junior Sinclair, Ashmead Ned, Shaqiri Paris. 5 of those 12, we have no idea if they're even going to play in the next Super 50. And if they don't play in Super 50 because no franchise picks them up, what are we saying then? Now, hopefully, for those 5 that I mentioned, because they don't qualify for the West Indies Academy, hopefully CCC picks them up. But if CCC don't pick them up, and if their home franchise doesn't pick them up, what are we really saying then? Ladies and gentlemen, I've been Machel St. Patrick here at one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. You're not, listen, I'm being honest. I'm not just saying this. Yes, I have to promote my own podcast and our own show and all of this. But I mean this when I say it. No other media outlet covers West Indies cricket the way we do it. No one else answers the questions that actually have to be asked. And not in some clickbait way. We're talking about real, actual, let's break this down, let's have a conversation, and let's look at this analytically. You ain't going to get this anywhere else in the region because we won't cheerlead. We are not here to cheerlead. We will not do the clickbait thing. We will ask the honest questions, whether people want them asked or not, whether it makes us, whether it gets us into the rooms that we need to be in or not, whether it shuts doors on us or not. The one thing you'll always get with CCP is we'll keep it 100% real. If you want to follow Caribbean Cricket Podcast, just type into Google Caribbean Cricket Podcast or all of those social media platforms at Carib Cricket, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, OnlyFans, Snapchat, TikTok, all of those things that you people go on. We're there. Add us, follow us, like, share, subscribe. And as ever, as I always say, if you want to keep the show on the road, because we don't do this with sponsorship, it's just us and the fans. www.patreon.com/Carib Cricket. Every little bit helps. I'll be Machel St. Patrick Hewitt, one half the Caribbean Cricket Podcast. See you again very, very soon.
West Indies Cricket, Caribbean Cricket Podcast. West Indies Cricket. Podcast.